The Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio was a book written in 1740. Its topics are all about paranormal, with some very long stories. Others are much shorter. They are capturing, but also have very high literature accomplishment. In fact, it's praised as the peak, the highest level of Chinese literature written among all proses written in the classical literature style. Today, we look at story number 12. It is a horror story, but it is also written in this very famous book. So please bear with me. I have 20 minutes to finish the reading. Story number 12, The Painted Skin. At Taiyuan City, there lived a man named Wang. Wang was a scholar. One early morning, it was still dark. He was out for business and walking when he met a young lady carrying a big bundle and hurrying along the street by herself. As the young lady moved along with some difficulty, Wang quickened his pace and caught her up. Wang looked at her and found she was a pretty girl of about 16 or 17 years old. Much smitten, Wang inquired whether she was going so early and no one was walking with her. The young girl replied, "A traveler like you cannot alleviate my distress. Why trouble yourself to ask?" Wang asked, "What distress is it? I'm sure I will do anything I can for you." The young girl seemed trusted Wang and said, "My parents loved money, and they married me into a wealthy family. However, my husband already had a lover, and she was very jealous and beat and abused me morning and night. It was more than I could stand, so I have to run away." Wang asked her where she was going, to which she replied that a runaway had no fixed place of abode. Wang immediately replied, "My house is at no great distance. What do you say to coming to my house?" The young girl joyfully agreed, and Wang, taking up her bundle, led the way to his house. Wang's house has a section which is a library, which has all the collections of his books, and a bedroom. Finding no one there, the young girl asked Wang where his family were, to which Wang replied that this was only the library and a very nice place to live too. The young girl said, "If you are kind enough to wish to save my life, you mustn't let it be known that I am here." Wang promised he would not divulge her secret, and so the young girl remained there for many days without anyone knowing anything about it. It turned out Wang was married, and his wife would return at the end of the month. When his wife returned, Wang told his wife, and she, fearing the girl might belong to some influential family, advised Wang to send her away. This, however, Wang would not consent to. The couple disagreed. Time flies. A couple months later, Wang went into the town, where he met a fortune teller who looked at him in astonishment and asked Wang what he had met. "I've met nothing," replied Wang. "Why do you ask?" The fortune teller said, "You are bewitched. What do you mean by not having met anything?" But Wang insisted that it was so, and the fortune teller walked away, saying, "Wang, you are the fool. Some people don't seem to know when death is at hand." This remark of the fortune teller startled Wang, who at first thought of the young girl, but then he reflected that a pretty young thing as she was could not well be a witch, and began to suspect that the fortune teller merely wanted to do a stroke of business. When he returned, the library door was shut, and he couldn't get in. Thinking about what the fortune teller was telling today, Wang was suspicious. So he climbed over the wall, where he found the door of the inner room was also shut tight. Softly creeping in, Wang looked through the window and saw a hideous devil in the room with a green face and jagged teeth like a saw. The devil was spreading a human skin upon the bed and painting it with a paintbrush. The devil then threw aside the brush and giving the skin a shake out, just as you would do a coat. The devil then wore it by throwing it over his shoulders. Then, oh my goodness, it was the young girl. Terrified at this, Wang hurried away with his head down in search of the fortune teller. He found the fortune teller in the fields, where Wang threw himself on his knees and begged the fortune teller to save him. "As to driving her away," said the fortune teller, "the creature must be in great distress to be seeking a substitute for herself. Besides, I could hardly endure to injure a living thing." However, he gave Wang a fly brush and bade him hang it at the door of the bedroom, agreeing to meet again at the Chindi temple after things are settled down. Wang went home. He was so scared he dared not enter the library, so he hung up the brush at the bedroom door, and before long heard a sound of footsteps outside. Not daring to move, he made his wife peep out, and she saw the girl standing, looking at the brush at the entrance, afraid to pass it. She then ground her teeth and went away, but in a little while came back and began cursing, saying, "You, fortune teller, you won't frighten me. Do you think I am going to give up what is already in my hand?" Thereupon she tore the brush to pieces, and bursting open the door, walked straight up to the bed, where she ripped open Wang's chest and tore out his heart, with which she went away. Wang's wife screamed out, and the servant came in with a light, but Wang was already dead and presented a most miserable spectacle. His wife, who was in an agony of fright, hardly dared cry for fear of making a noise. And next day, she sent Wang's brother to seek out the fortune teller. The latter got into a great rage and cried out, "Was it for this that I had compassion on you, devil, that you are proceeding at once with Wang's brother to the house from which the girl had disappeared, without anyone knowing where she had gone?" But the priest, raising his head, looked around and said, "Luckily, the devil is not far off." He then asked who lived in the apartments on the south side, to which Wang's brother replied that he did. Whereupon the fortune teller declared that there she would be found. Wang's brother was horrified and said he did not think so, and then the fortune teller asked him if any stranger had been to the house. To this he answered that he had been out to the Chindi temple and couldn't possibly say, but he went off to inquire, and in a little while came back and reported that an old lady had sought service with them as a maid of all work, and had been engaged by his wife. "That is her," said the priest, or the fortune teller, as Wang's brother added she was still there. And they all set out to go to the house together. Then the priest or fortune teller took his wooden sword and, standing in the middle of the courtyard, shouted out, "Base-born fiend, give me back my fly brush." Meanwhile, the new maid of all work was in great state of alarm and tried to get away by the door, but the priest or fortune teller struck her, and down she fell flat. The human skin dropped off, and she became a hideous devil. There she lay, grunting like a pig, until the priest or fortune teller grasped his wooden sword and struck off the green head. She then became a dense column of smoke curling up from the ground when the fortune teller took an uncorked gourd and threw it right into the midst of the smoke. A sucking noise was heard, and the whole column was drawn into the gourd. After which, the fortune teller corked it up closely and tightly and put it in his pouch. The human skin, too, which was complete even to the eyebrows, eyes, hands, and feet, he also rolled up as if it had been a scroll, and was on the point of leaving with it when Wang's wife stopped him and with tears entreated him to bring her husband back to life. The priest said he was unable to do that, but Wang's wife flung herself at his feet and with loud lamentations implored his assistance. For some time, the fortune teller remained immersed in thought and then replied, "My power is not equal to that. What you are asking for, I myself cannot raise the dead, but I will direct you to someone who can. And if you apply to him properly, you will succeed." Wang's wife asked the priest or the fortune teller who it was, to which he replied, "There is a maniac in the town who passes his time groveling in the dirt. Go prostrate yourself before him and beg him to help you. If he insults you, show no sign of anger." Wang's brother knew the man to whom he alluded, and accordingly bade to the priest or fortune teller adieu, and proceeded thither with his sister-in-law. They found the destitute creature raving away by the roadside, so filthy that it was all they could do to go near him. Wang's wife approached him on her knees, at which the maniac leered at her and cried out, "Do you love me, my beauty?" Wang's wife told him what she had come for, but he only laughed and said, "You can get plenty of other husbands. Why raise the dead one to life?" But Wang's wife entreated him to help her. Whereupon he observed, "It's very strange. People apply to me to raise their dead as if I was king of the infernal regions." He then gave Wang's wife a thrashing with his staff, which she bore without a murmur, and before a gradual increasing crowd of spectators. After this, he produced a loathsome pill, which he told her she must swallow, but here she broke down and was quite unable to do so. However, she did manage it at last, and then the maniac, crying out, "How do you love me?" got up and went away without talking to them anymore. They followed him into a temple but lost him inside. And every effort to find him was unsuccessful. Overcome with rage and shame, Wang's wife went home, where she mourned bitterly over her dead husband, grievously repenting the steps she had taken and wishing only to die. She then bethought herself of preparing the corpse, near which none of the servants would venture, and set to work to close up the frightful wound of which Wang died. While thus employed, interrupt from the time to time she sobs of her sobs. She felt a rising lump in her throat, which by and by came out with a pop and fell straight into the dead man's wound. Looking closely at it, she saw it was a human heart, and then it began as it were to throb, emitting a warm vapor like smoke. Much excited, she at once closed the flesh over it and held the sides of the wound together with all her might. Very soon, however, she got tired, and finding the vapor escaping from the crevices, she tore up a piece of silk and bound one's chest around it, at the same time bringing back circulation by rubbing the body, the hands, the feet, and covering it up with the clothes. In the night, she removed the covering and found that the wounds have healed and the breaths were coming from the nose. And by next morning, her husband was alive again, though disturbed in mind as if awakening from a nightmare and feeling a pain in his chest where he had been wounded, and was a cicatrice about as big as a cash, which soon after disappeared. End of story number 12.